Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. My name is Sudisha and I'm the Junior Research Scholar for Takshashila's 20 Million Jobs. And in today's episode, we'll discuss about the skill ecosystem in India with further discussions around Rozgar Mela and NSDC. I also have with me Sowmya Prabhakar, Head of Corporate Affairs at Takshashila.
Thanks, Sudisha, and hello and welcome once again. We are here to talk about the skill ecosystem, and I'm proud to have two of our alumni. One is Priyanka Patil and Navaneeth, and both of them are at the Mahatma Gandhi National Fellowship, Ministry of Skill and Development and Entrepreneurship here in Bangalore. So I thought it would be interesting for Sudisha and myself to kind of go over the entire initiative bit as well as look at the different tangents. So before we get started, let's actually look at what the skill ecosystem looks like and the spirit behind initiating something like this and a little bit of how things have panned out, and then we'll get into the details of it.
Okay, so the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, although is a fairly new ministry, the country has been thinking about skill since way back in 2008, when the National Skill Development Fund was set up. A whole task force was set up to look at the National Skill Qualification Framework, and the National Skill Development Corporation was set up. Since then, the National Skill Development Corporation, which operates on a public-private partnership model, has incubated 37 sector skill councils, which are non-profits that are industry consortiums that engage actively with the industry and the skilling training providers. So this is the structure at the top, and at every state there is a state skill development mission, and at every district there is a district skill mission, which is headed by the district magistrate of that district. So the spirit of the entire ecosystem is that it is supposed to be decentralized. It is supposed to be bottom up, and the districts and the states at sub-country levels participate in the initiatives that happen at the top, and it percolates down to every bit.
To understand skill ecosystem in our country, we need to talk about the education system of our country first. We used to prioritize on these conventional degrees first. But now we've understood that what industry needs is not just education, they need skill. So therefore, the need to identify skill as a concept other than education came up. Since then, like Navaneeth said here, that was started way before the ministry even was set up. So it was 2008, I think the STAR scheme was launched. So, but the ideation of the skill was not as comprehensive as it is now. Like today, we have so many sector skill councils, we have district level administrations monitoring skill in each district. But what STAR scheme did before was it laid the foundation for what we have today, about the comprehensive network of skilling ecosystem that we have. And even the private industries, they understood that how skilling ecosystem was necessary. The identification of that happened in the ministry, and that's why it's good that today the skill ministry is set up. It's not just education, but skilling is as important. So that's why we are talking about skilling today.
So it's essentially making people job ready and not just giving them theoretical inputs, which typically, our education system would strengthen is a lot of theoretical concepts and fundamentals. But here the skill ecosystem is looking at anchoring, things that will help them readily get jobs. Is that what it's meant to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, when we spoke about education, we spoke about your classroom studies and your theoretical concept of it, which is as important as we also need practical knowledge. But we were not identifying the practical aspect of it. So what we're doing today is we're identifying the practical aspect. We are planning to, include your on-job trainings, your apprenticeship programs, your internship programs through skilling system.
There is the education track and there is the vocation track. Well, education track is very aspirational for a better quality of life. Vocational track, for example, ITIs and the short-term skill training programs is left or has largely been left to people who have dropped out of the education track, either dropouts or people who want a job as soon as they finish their 10th or 12th and don't want to spend another 4 years in education. So this also is an attempt to make the vocational track aspirational, and through the national credit framework and the entire gamut of things that surround it, it is to bring, and through the national education policy also, is to bring education and vocation together and have vocation and skill development courses integrated with the educational courses, and not have them as two separate tracks, multiple entry and multiple exit points from either track.
Okay.
What they're doing now is that they're complementing each other right now.
Okay. So there's no entry barrier for any of these courses that's offered more from the skilling point of view, or there is basic education that's required?
There is, and like there's an entry criteria. I wouldn't say it's a barrier.
Okay.
It's just like there are educational levels like class 10, class 12, class this one. There is something called as the NSQF, National Skill Qualification Framework, which puts 12 levels for any skill training to be given. So that has an equation with the education system. For example, if a skill needs minimum 8th standard education, it will have a level 3 or a level 4. If it needs a graduate level education, it will have a NSQF level 6. So that kind of an equation exists. So if you are do a course which is NSQF level 6, you need to have a minimum qualification of a bachelor's degree, preferably in the subjects that are recommended. It's something like that. So the National Skill Qualification Framework and the sector skill councils that have created these curriculums in a partnership with the industry ensure that the curriculum thus created is industry ready. It's called National Occupational Standards Qualification Packs, QP for National Occupational Standards. So what that does is it ensures that the training that is given, short-term or long-term training that is given to the trainees, is industry compliant, and at the end of the training period and the on-job training, the candidate is ready for the industry.
Okay. Sudisha, want to go next?
Yeah, hi Navaneeth and Priyanka. So I think the question that I want to ask is related to the Rozgar Mela, which is in news right now. When somebody searches about it online, there are news reports which are telling the number of jobs that have been handed out, but there's not much information on the kind of jobs that people are getting. Where are these roles coming from? What's the nature of these jobs? So I would appreciate if you can just highlight that a bit.
Yeah, Sudisha, the idea of Rozgar Mela was to curb or reduce migration. There was a lot of inter-district and interstate migration as well, and it was not helping the economy of the grassroots. That's why the government came up with the concept of this Rozgar Mela. Before, there used to be, we used to hear about these placement drives, job fairs, etc., but it wasn't as organized as it is today. So today what they're doing is they're trying to hold these Rozgar Mela at the district level. Usually it would happen in a city center in the state, where again people have different districts to migrate to those city centers. But now what they're trying to do is they're trying to again decentralize the Rozgar Melas into districts. So the idea of this is to make the districts self-sustainable. The youth of the district should be working in the district for the district and to develop the economy of the district. So Rozgar Melas were started on this idea. Now, since Sudisha is asking about the recent Rozgar Mela event that was launched, the idea is not to just, and I think it is a symbolic event where, it is like a clarion call for other districts as well to, come up with their own Rozgar Melas. So instead of focusing on how many numbers were actually, targeted in the recent launch, we need to understand why it was even done. It was happening before, but since Prime Minister took it up, maybe it helped the other districts as well to wake up and, to do these things. Those weren't as mandated as before, but now I think every district is mandated. They need to have Udyoga Melas every 3 months, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that's the idea behind this. Sudisha, are you alluding to the 75,000 applications that were distributed recently?
Yeah, yes, pretty much that.
So the 75,000, I mean, giving an appointment letter is not a big deal, and any company can give out appointment letters, and companies do need a lot of talent. They need to hire a lot of people. This is from my own recent experience holding Rozgar Melas in our own districts, since I'm a fellow in Gadag district of Karnataka. So we've tried to, come up with these Udyoga Mela programs in our districts. In my district, the specific issue is that we don't have a lot of industries. And any industry that comes from neighboring districts will be needing a lot of people, because usually people from North Karnataka migrate to South Karnataka in search of jobs. Yeah. That's why there's a lot of dearth of talent for industries that are set up in North Karnataka. What we experienced in our Rozgar Mela that was held in Gadag was that most of the companies were ready to hand out appointment letters just like that, without even interviews. They knew that the candidates are qualified ITI graduates, and they weren't looking much for communication skills or all these soft skill jargons that we give a lot of importance about.
Yeah.
But they were like desperate, I would say, because the way they were handing out the appointment letters, they were desperate to hire talent. But how many actually go into those jobs? 200 appointment letters were actually handed out. I think hardly 10 or 20 would have gone for those jobs. So there is no post placement tracking for these people. Like, I mean, we can't just stop at giving appointment letters. We need to follow up on
Closure,
that.
right?
Yeah. There's no closure on those.
But how do you actually announce these things? Like, do women also participate in these conversations? Because mobility is like a key element here, right? One is how to get to places where such melas happen. Is it accessible? Is it convenient for even female labor force participation rates to improve?
Yeah. So these Rozgar Melas, it's again what I said was it was held in the district. Therefore, the commute for women as well, it would be much easier than commuting to Bangalore or Mysore or places like these where usually the placement drives were held. When it is within the district, it is easier for women to travel. So I would assume that participation of women. We don't have clear numbers on this. That's the point. We need to focus more on how many women participated. But in my experience, placement drive that we conducted in our district, approximately 25 to 30% of women participated, which was actually a very good turnout from what we expected.
You were saying something.
Brass tacks numbers. Rozgar Melas and Udyoga Melas have a bad rep for being show rather than a do. But if you really look at the reports also, and the way the entire program design is sort of structured, it is not that one organization or one central authority is organizing the Mela. There are the Prime Minister's Kaushalya Kendras, PMKKs, they are organizing Rozgar Melas. The sector skill councils, they are organizing Rozgar Melas. The state skill development and the district skill missions, they are organizing Rozgar Melas. The National Skill Development Corporation itself in some cases is organizing Rozgar Melas. So it's not happening. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in a big way with the pandal and things like that. It can happen in small, this one. Some of them are just 65 candidates and 5 companies where 62 of them are placed at smaller level. So if you look at it in that perspective, the number sort of makes sense. At the outset, if like portrayed in the media, 75,000 is an aggregation of all of that. It is the sort of bottom up approach that comes. So PMKKs also train, and the placement drives for the candidates who are trained, because these are sector skill council certified courses. There will be a sort of intent letter that is given to the organization prior to the training itself, saying at the end of 3 months I'm going to hire 30 of your candidates. So if the program design is in such a way, then the placement sort of becomes easier and your numbers make more sense. And there is inclusion criteria embedded into the work orders that are given. For example, if 30 candidates are there, a percentage has to be from women, a percentage has to be OBC, SC. All of these criteria are also embedded in the program sort of design. So at that from when we look at it from that perspective, it sort of makes more sense than just looking at it from the end result perspective. That's what I would like to add.
Okay. So lending into this, are there efforts towards making it very localized in terms of job placements? Like you said, number of people who come for this might be promising, but because if you don't give local employment, my own experience of being at the grassroots level communities, working alongside with them, the challenge I saw that youngsters is actually skilled in mobile repairs, but the audience for that would be in the urban setup. Now this youngster goes to the city to ensure that a job is there in hand, but then you have your living expenses which are higher, then you have a meager salary amount that comes in, so you can't sustain and you're compromised even on nutrition. So the family says come back. Now, how does that ecosystem work? And if you could talk about the Karnataka Kaushalya or anything that's worked, even in the Orissa belt, we were just reading up something. So if you could kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah. From my own personal experience, I know for sure that youth are not ready to migrate to city centers. They want to be in their districts. They want to be with their families and, look for job good jobs, aspirational jobs in their own districts. They don't want to migrate, even though they have a lucrative salary outside, better paying, opportunities. They wouldn't migrate. That's what I've experienced in my district. I mean, youth have a lot of access to information right now, so they know that the standards that job actually gives them, and they want those standards in their own communities. They don't want to hold this, them going and living in some lucrative area, whereas their parents or their family are back in their rural districts. They don't want to do that. So what I've realized is, maybe you can give them a lucrative job, minimum paying job in their own district. They would be happier with that. Recently we held a placement drive for these for the candidates who had a graduate not graduate, they were certified in the PMKY COVID crash course program. So this crash course program was launched during the COVID pandemic to address the a lack of healthcare workers in hospitals. So these candidates were given an opportunity to they were given a little bit of theory as well as on job training in the hospitals, so with a minimum stipend or something. But the problem, I mean, after they certified, COVID pandemic is over, everything is almost back to normal right now. Hospitals don't need them anymore. Now they want to look for jobs. There are not many hospitals in Gadag district, but there is a lot of demand in the geriatric healthcare and home healthcare sector. So we found companies who were hiring for these opportunities. They came to the district, they hired these people, but none of them were ready to migrate to other district. Even though there was zero expense from their part, there was no living expense as well, because it was a home healthcare. They were staying with the patient at home. The salary was well above minimum wages. There was no boarding or lodging expenses for them. Despite that, they were not ready to move, because they don't want to live in any other even though it pays well, they don't want to get away from families. They don't want to the youth have a lot of responsibilities in their home. So I think we're not identifying these issues, and that's why the youth usually don't migrate to these cities. Since you gave me an example of like living elsewhere, and obviously they have to live on their own, and they don't have as much of comfort that they had back home. That is another issue, I'm sure. But apart from that, I'm pretty sure that they don't want to migrate with us. That's why the need of Rozgar Melas came into place, that we need to find jobs locally. If there are no industries, maybe you can make them self-sustainable to be an entrepreneur, or self-employment. You can identify opportunities that are in the district, but don't go for these. I mean, that's the advice we got, like, don't go for these mass migration of some big company from different city coming to your city and then hiring people. It's never going to work long term.
At the district level, the idea of having a district skill mission is to address this very sort of issue. Like she said, provide entrepreneurial opportunities for those for districts that do not necessarily have a large industry base. The district skill committee is constitutes of the government officials, representatives from the industry, representatives from the civil society, representatives from academia, all of that. It's a very, on paper at least, it's very, very well designed sort of committee. What that does is identify these bottlenecks and take district level decisions, administrative decisions, and encourage district level programs to sort of address these bottlenecks. So there is the lead bank manager who's also a participant. So for example, if a skilled person from some districts want to take up some initiative, the lead bank, through the lead district manager, LDM, he or she can apply for loans and start their sort of enterprise, and the district skills committee and district skill development office at the district level will support that. If they want to group up and form a self-help group and do some business that way, the National Rural Livelihoods Mission or the National Urban Livelihoods Mission can support them. So there are at least in some form, there are methods to sort of address these issues. The efficiency needs to be increased, the access for it needs to be increased, and it has to go more to the people, and vice versa. People need to come to that to sort of address this issue at large. And you also talked about Odisha and the lessons we could sort of take from some lead states. So the early next year, there is supposed to be the national Chief Secretary's Conference at Delhi, and for that, skilling is one of the sub themes that is done. Odisha and Karnataka are selected as the lead states for skilling. Odisha for access to skilling, and Karnataka for quality in skilling. So, what activity we were part of it, recently? What this activity sort of did at the state levels was grouping 18 states and union territories together and having a discussion on how to improve access to skilling and how to improve quality in skilling. For example, Odisha has done a very interesting initiative where they have sort of made the skilling track aspirational. That's something we just spoke about. What they've done is they've completely, one main thing is how you appear. You dress for the man you want to be, is a or the woman you want to be, is a quote that is thrown out a lot. It's that you make your uniforms something nice instead of the drab uniforms that usually ITI students are forced to wear. That was point number one. Point number two, just like the Teach for India fellowship that has young people going into these schools and teaching there, the Odisha government sort of initiated a fellowship for young engineers to go and teach in ITIs for 2 years. So initiatives like this sort of made skilling aspirational, or this vocational track aspirational, and it improved access. Similarly, in Karnataka's case, we when we talk about quality, having a strong monitoring this one in place, ensuring that, so we have a mechanism of giving work orders to, because these skill training programs are essentially free, short-term skill training programs. The government pays for it. The government pays for every candidate that is skilled by the training provider. We have a mechanism where we have regular visits by the district skill development officer, regular monitoring of the skill training program. We have CCTV monitoring of this one, and we also have a mechanism where only if the candidates of that training center are placed, 70% or more are placed, we give them further work orders. It's a process where qualities, and then letter of intents and expression of interest from the industry, all of that also comes in. So these are best practices that we share with the larger state communities, and they take it to their states and things like that. Sorry,
Okay.
I don't know.
No, it's quite aspirational as well, right? And it's nice that some innovation has come in place. We'll take a quick break and then come back to this conversation. Welcome back. And now we will kind of also try and see in the Karnataka context if there is something that's being done, or if there's a roadmap ahead which has more promise. Both Priyanka and Navaneeth could quickly share a little bit on that note.
Yeah, Karnataka has actually come up with a lot of initiatives. I mean, there are, really, really innovative concepts that we've come up with to address industry demand for skilling, not just locally, but also globally. There is something called as a Skill Connect portal. Like, it's an integrated, comprehensive portal, alternative to something that we talk about like LinkedIn or Naukri or, these other job portals. But this is completely run by the government of Karnataka. It's free, it's accessible, and it's integrated with LMS, learning management system, and there are mentors there who can guide throughout your career. And there are job opportunities like apprenticeship opportunities, full-time opportunities, internship opportunities, government jobs, private jobs. It's completely an integrated portal. So any youth who is looking for a job can register themselves there. Any industry looking for talent can register themselves there. So it's completely run by government of Karnataka. So the idea of this is to make it more accessible. All these other private job portals are actually, they charge you premium fees. So obviously the rural, the marginalized communities are completely dropped out of those portals. But this here, the idea is to cover the entire state. And there is something called as International Migration Center. So this is to identify job youth who are looking for jobs abroad. So Karnataka has tied up with Karnataka. Actually, there are many private recruitment agencies who charge a certain amount of fees to look for job abroad and tie up with employers outside. But what government is doing, that again, it's making it accessible. They'll give you genuine job opportunities. There are a lot of scams happening with the private recruitment agencies. So the government itself is now identified as a recruitment agency. They will mobilize the youth here who are interested to look for jobs abroad. And they also want to not limit themselves to certain kind of jobs, but cover all sectors, even high paying jobs, right down to your domestic workers, your home healthcare workers, nurses, etc. Do you want to add more to that, Amit?
Yeah. So the International Migration Center, Karnataka has already sent 500 plus people abroad for various job roles over the last year of its existence. The idea is to give a complete support structure for anybody who wants to go abroad, right from their pre-departure orientation training to their visa to their placement with the employer there, That's something very important. Through their connection with the embassy, if they want to come back, that process, facilitating the entire process from the government, because we don't want to have these. We hear a lot about the problems of people going there and not being treated well and not being able to sort of contact the embassies and things like that. NSDC also recently has come up with an initiative called NSDC International, where it planning to do the same thing. There are MOUs signed with. So the idea of Skill India is not just skill for India; it's skill in India, skill for the world. That's the idea. So countries like Japan, Australia, the Middle East, they are in dire need of skilled manpower, and they're looking to India to supply it. And the demographic dividend right now caters to that. If we are able to capitalize on this opportunity, then we will make good use of the opportunities that exist abroad. So that's the idea behind these initiatives that happen at the state level and at the national level. Let's see how it pans out, and I'm hopeful that it pans out well.
Okay. And the recruitment process would be different, is it, in terms of what's followed?
It's similar to what the industries hire here as well,
Okay.
These basic interviews, tests, sort of things, depending on the companies that are hiring. Recently, we had a job opportunity from a Romania train factory. So they were hiring for, ITI candidates locally. We did engage a lot of ITI students, to mobilize them and everything. But there is a little bit of, a language problem, them migrating to a different country completely. It's not even English language. They have a different language there. So all these kind of challenges, which are being addressed by the government, they're trying to, again, like Navaneeth said, in the pre-departure orientation training, it's called PDOT. So there is the foreign language training as well. They train them in the language of the destination, and then they send them to the States after they get their appointment letter. Yeah.
That's the idea behind the National School Qualification Framework. Because it is certified by industry, it is supposed to be internationally valid. So any NSQF certificate holder, your ITI diplomas are NSQF certified. Your short-term skill training programs under PMKUI, CMKKY, or DDUGKY, or any of the NSQF certified programs are all NSQF certified. So if you have an NSQF level 6, that means you are eligible for certain job roles in most, if not all, countries, other than, of course, India.
Interesting. But given that there is so much happening even on the tech front and, ensuring gaps are kind of closed, do you also see like there are work from home opportunities and all that that's created as well in the midst of COVID? Did that happen?
Yeah. Pandemic actually gave away a lot to, creating work from home opportunities. I mean, when it comes to IT sector, it's easier to, create work from home opportunities. Yeah. And again, that's like women benefited a lot from that actually, because many hesitated to migrate, or the commute would be horrible, or burdens of other responsibilities as well fell upon them. So work from home actually gave access to actually work. So there are companies, but I'm hearing that again the companies are going back to their old working methods. I hope that's not going to be because IT gives you that flexibility of working from home. But other sectors, I mean, we can't expect that, I think.
Yeah. All right. So great having Navaneeth and Priyanka here on this podcast. And being Takshashila alumni, we also realized that at least Priyanka was an UPSC aspirant at some point. And currently Navaneeth is so soaked in the role that there's so much excitement every time I talk to him. And he has so many things to share. Okay, that's happening. This is new. These are the challenges kind of thing. So on the closing note, if you would like to share beyond UPSC, I'm sure there are other avenues for people to engage in doing exciting stuff. So we could close on that.
So yeah, this is my favorite topic actually, because 2013 I graduated from engineering and information science engineering. So obviously there was a lot of everyone were going towards IT sector, lucrative jobs and everything. But I obviously was not interested. I don't know why I did engineering as well. But after that, the conventional mindset was, if you want to get into policy, if you want to get into social sector, you will have to look for government job, be a new IAS officer or something like that. And that's what I thought as well, and that's why I started preparing for my UPSC, and that's where I got the exposure of what a vast sea of opportunities that social sector has created. And I started my own NGO in 2015 after that. So that actually gave me access to skilling ecosystem in the state, in the country. And that's where I found out that preparing for UPSC or government job is not just only way for getting into public policy or social sector. And that's when I found out about Takshashila as well, and it being many of my friends had passed out of this institution, and that's when I found out how there is an completely alternative ecosystem to get into public policy. So this actually gave me an opportunity to completely build a career out of public policy from here. Yeah. So that's I actually suggest everyone that who are preparing for government exams as well, that's not the end of it. Like, there are a lot of opportunities.
First of all, it's nice to be in all things policy. I keep listening to the podcast on my long commutes in Bangalore, and for the first time to be on the other side, it's quite a nice feeling. People want to work in government because they can pilot programs at scale and see real change happen, which is great. But the only way of working with governments is not necessarily in government jobs. There are opportunities like the fellowship we are doing, where we are working completely in the system and contributing to real change that will have ripple effects later on. Plus, there are opportunities where you can work on government projects like Priyanka. Before she was a fellow, she has been working with the skill ecosystem on training for a while, taking up government projects and helping it percolate to the ground. So there are opportunities aplenty. There are internships with the government. There are fellowships with the government. Government has public-private partnerships which hire like companies where you work. For example, NSDC, it may be DPIIT, it may be Invest India, it may be Startup India. All of these initiatives that the government has taken, it looks for young professionals to engage in some form or the other. And if you do not like it after a while, you always have the option of going back into the corporate sector. So opportunities like this are aplenty, and I think as aspirants of creating change, this is something that we need to look at as well.
Yeah, Navaneeth, you wanted to talk about the third element, right? Go ahead.
One of the other initiatives we've taken, which also forms one of the tenets or pillars of the skill ecosystem along with inclusion, is industry engagement or industry linkage. So the Karnataka Skill Development Corporation has constituted something called as the industry linkage cell. What this does is this actively engages with industries to map out their requirements and pilot demand-based employment-linked skill training programs using the facilities and the equipment that the industries have in their premises. And once the training is over, they are job ready. They get absorbed into that industry or any of the similarly serviceable sort of industries. So we look at industry associations, we look at industries as in companies themselves engaging on that. This ranges from everything, right from logistics to capital goods to tech to manufacturing, everything. So this is one of the initiatives that Karnataka Skill Development has taken as a best practice and is looking to pilot it across the state and maybe scale it up to this one as well. Another initiative would be the Udyoga initiative, where it works on a private partnership model where Tata Trust and Tata Technologies and an industry consortium of 15 other industries have come together and invested upwards of 4,000 crores on upgrading ITIs and making them competent enough for Industry 4.0 so that students get on-hand experience there and are absorbed into jobs. So these are some of the ways that the government has been working on it, and other governments also are working on initiatives like this, like the Skill University, like skill parks, etc.
Okay, now we'll do the next plug for where Priyanka was talking about her own journey. So you wanted to add something, Priyanka, there?
Yeah. When we talk about having multiple pathways after the fellowship or in the public policy sector, in our experience, like when during our fellowship as well, the idea of when Navaneeth said we have to work with different industries, different sectors as well, the intention is that we shouldn't leave any sector behind. Like, we are giving importance to your manufacturing, capital goods, etc., but you don't leave behind agriculture sector as well. So you have to identify agriculture sector. So one of the initiatives that the central government has come up with is to make a comprehensive district skill development plan. So it's not just somewhere in the top management they say that districts need to be empowered. No, people in the district have to think about the district, come up with a comprehensive district skill development plan where we identify the sectors that are active in the district. For example, in my district, Gadag, there are no large industries. The major focus is on agriculture. What next after agriculture? You can't just rely on the farming sector because of irregular climatic conditions. So you need to focus on value addition for agriculture. You need to focus on food industries, food processing industries, etc. That's why right now in our fellowship as well, we are, one of our key performance indicators is to come up with comprehensive district skill development plan, which will guide the district administration, to come up with initiatives with reference to the plan. So that is one thing we are engaged in. And this actually, opens up a lot of opportunities in the district as well. Just by mentioning the important sectors that are in the district will actually give new ideas for the youth in the district. Just by saying that there is scope for food processing industries, maybe the youth can come and set up their food processing industries in the district. And the governments, the banks, they're ready to give out credit linkages for these kind of initiatives. Again, it's another step towards making the district self-sustainable.
Okay. Thanks so much, Priyanka and Navaneeth. Sudisha, thanks for hosting all of us on this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for the podcast, and we'll be back with another one soon.
Sure.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, IVMPodcasts.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.